Welcome to the podcast. We talk about all the things that are hidden in the shadows. This is Isaac, and on this bonus episode, I am joined by George Popov from Rubicon Films. He has directed 3 doc films around the paranormal. Basically, he calls a SideWorld series. Welcome, George.
Thanks for having me, buddy. It's good to be here.
And it's interesting that you're the second director I think we've interviewed. Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah. Hope to get more in, just especially when it comes to paranormal. But you're interesting in a case that you've done documentary films around the paranormal. You're first in that, to documenting paranormal films, stuff like that. But a quick question, I guess, to get us started off. What got you into film to begin with?
Well, various things really. I mean, like when I was very young, I especially when we're talking about the horror genre, I saw probably at the responsibly young age. I saw Alien, and I both fell in love with it, and I was terrified by it at the same time. And it was amazing. And then on television, I became a huge fan of the X-Files, which is where kind of my interest in the paranormal came through at that time. And I come from a family with all kinds of artists. My father is a painter, my mother was an actress, and my grandfather a theater director. So all these influences from, the different angles, I saw film as the art form that combined all of them. And I was really excited to do something where you can tell a story, while, making your choices about music and actors and the story, from a written form as well. So little by little, and by watching a bunch of films, I already got into ways like how do you best tell your stories in a visual way. And before the SideWorld series as well, we as Rubicon Films, I have directed 2 narrative feature films as well, which are kind of like in the folk horror genre. And those are kind of the ones that really we kind of earned our stripes on in the indie filmmaking genre and universe. But with SideWorld, we thought we can tell some stories that we wouldn't have the time to really develop as a full fictional feature film from a narrative side, but we can probably explore them from the documentary point of view.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And what was your first film? Not necessarily talking about the SideWorld series, but like your first film that you ever did.
It was called Hex. We did a film called Hex, which was kind of like a witch story from 17th century England. We shot it. It was our first thing, so shoestring budget, and we managed to get a bunch of costumes from the period, and it was a great. It was right after our film school. That's when I met my producing partner Jonathan, which we created Rubicon Films together, and yeah, I think the film for its size did pretty well, and a lot of people started talking to us about it, and it had a really nice atmosphere, and it was a great little first experience to do as a debut horror film. But it wasn't even the fact that we were trying to make necessary something that was either more historical or more horror or anything like that. It was the combination of all those different interests that we had in that period, and in the Civil War in England at the time, and it was during the kind of a period of witch hunts and everything that then later on translated into America and in New England. So that's where a lot of those interests come from, and that led to our second feature film after that.
And I guess I think you're kind of not saying answered the first question, but it's like that. But I guess leading into my next question, essence like that. But why the paranormal specifically for your doc series SideWorld?
I mean, it's the paranormal angle is sort of inevitable when you talk about all these stories that are because some of them are historical, some of them are more modern, some of them are from the 20th century, some of them it's there's so many great stories around this country and in every country really when it comes to its paranormal events that can happen to creatures and how much they're related to an actual historical fact or fiction or something that might have come from something comes from a long time from fairy tales, and a lot of people talk about it, about a creature or a cryptid, as we would say these days. And sometimes they come through into popular fiction as well. I mean, for example, in our first SideWorld film which we made, which was Haunted Forests of England, which came out last year now. Towards the beginning of it, we explain how there is this, for example, that those spectral dogs, which are seen multiple times in parts of England, around Dartmoor, and that was a big inspiration for Arthur Conan Doyle for The Hounds of Baskerville. So there's a lot of correlation between actual sightings and paranormal events and how they're then seen throughout history. And then I guess what we're trying to draw the line in not draw the line, but we're trying to explore that line in our films. It's where is that line between fact and fiction? Where does like the legend end, and then what's a real paranormal event start? Or what is really a paranormal event? Is it just something that's our science hasn't really just caught up with in terms of our understanding of it?
And it's an interesting point, and that's what I've been saying through our podcast for the longest time, is that my hope for the future with the paranormal is that it gets studied like any other science in the world. Like there's some technology we use, because I'm also a paranormal investigator on the side, that we use that to help us document the paranormal. And if there was more of lecture engineers and scientists that took more, I don't know, belief in it, or at least a stake in it, then we could probably have better technology in the mapping and documenting the existence of it. But have you ever investigated?
No, I'm primarily like I see it as I'm coming from the point of view of someone who's more of a newcomer into the area of the paranormal. Like I just look at the stories and I try to, in our documentary, try to tell the ones that seem the most interesting to explore from the point of view of all these combining narratives or exploration of it. Although I've always been interested of maybe doing it one day, but I wouldn't, in terms of the time we spent on is like honing in, my skills in terms of directing and writing, and part of me really wants to know because I really want to believe, and I do believe, a lot of certain paranormal events and creatures, and there's others that, I'm probably more ambivalent maybe towards. And I want to, part of me does really want to find the truth. But also at the same time, there's other ones that I just enjoy the story itself. And I kind of leave everything else to kind of, people like you or part of the viewers who are really latching onto the paranormal side of what we do. And I think it's a wonderful gateway into more research. But sometimes there are some stories that, are sound pretty unbelievable, or I personally wouldn't really find the scientific basis behind it at this point, and not that I'm a scientist, but I just enjoy the historical pedigree that he has, or like how or how he has affected a lot of other opinions or works of art or history behind it. But there's some paranormal things that have, while we've been filming, that just sometimes makes you think there's certainly something behind this.
Like, what kind of paranormal experiences you have?
I mean, it's difficult to say because I don't want to. Like I said, I'm new, and like probably someone like you will be able to tell me, oh, I know what that means. And I don't want to confuse something with maybe personal moments of that can be explained by something else. But I mean, for example, when we there is a story again in Haunted Forest of England, which was the first one, which we kind of end the whole documentary one, which is about a little lake in Epping Forest, which is one of the three forests that we explore. It's called the Suicide Pond, which there's been a lot of history behind events of people killing themselves in from medieval times all the way up to modern times. And there is a few theories of when that started and why it's happened, and there is a probably explanation behind it, which could be folklore, could be just people trying to explain to themselves what carries with that, with the atmosphere of that lake. And that was such an interesting story for us, and we wanted to tell it because there are so many ponds and lakes in that area, in that forest, and no one really knows for sure which one is the suicide pond. In the 50s, there was a volunteer sort of quest investigators and enthusiasts at the time to find out which one of all of them there was the actual suicide pond. And there is a retelling of a lady at the time who, remained anonymous, but she wrote these letters in which she explained that she did find she really believes that she's found the place, but she didn't want to disclose the location because she felt that the place was so evil and so negative that she didn't want to popularize it. She didn't want people to go there and actually try for themselves because of the negative energy she felt. So, which is a wonderful story. So we went there to shoot all of them. It was with the idea that we'll try to take a few shots of the most kind of the biggest suspects of which one of those lakes might be the suicide pond. And I mostly felt like as we usually film, I'm always in a very good mood because I love doing it, and I'm there with the crew and everything, and we're having a good time trying to get those places and trying to get our shots before the sun goes down. There's a bit of that, and it felt mostly really peaceful, even though it was very cold. England in December is mostly miserable. There's no snow. It's just kind of like crappy weather. But I have to say one of those lakes that we ended up shooting at, as we arrived at, it was kind of quiet and there was no one there. We've already probably done like 5 or 6 at that point, and I just stopped there with my cameraman and we looked at each other, and the kind of the hair on my head like stood up, and we just looked at it, and he's like, yeah, that's the one. That's just the moment you got there. There's something that it's almost like a tingle that went up your spine, like there was something like really. I felt like a deer in the forest, knowing that there's a wolf around it. If that makes any sense, it's just and I don't want to attribute that particularly to a paranormal experience because I wouldn't be able to quantify it as that. But I'll be lying if I say that that didn't happen.
It's your fight or flight instincts going off when a prey or another animal feels a predator's sense of mind. So that tells me that if you had instant chills being around somewhere like that there was something there that was dark and strong enough for your fight or flight to basically go off into a point where you felt extremely uneasy and you felt like you were being hunted.
Yeah. That's how it felt.
I had a few of those situations myself, but as of I don't know, the last couple of years, it's kind of gone away. Like the more you're into the field, the more and then with me and my wife's situation of what we do, it's kind of gone away all entirely. But that would be a whole different story. It's all about you.
No, I got you.
Yeah. So besides that point in time, I'm not saying investigating, but did you ever have a paranormal experience in your younger days? Like something that really just like you saw or like had, and you're like, holy crap.
No, it's mostly been just through someone else. I think my grandma's told me a lot of stories, in terms of on her, and I never really experienced it. But there's been, there's always been kind of like that era in our family, just like we know there's something, and then sometimes something happens, and you hear someone say it, like nothing personally on my side, but there was always that feeling like we lived right across a church as well, and that kind of always felt like he had like sometimes on certain days, not that I am particularly super Christian or anything, but it just sometimes there'll be weird events, like there'll be a family photo of someone's, probably my great grandfather or someone, he'll be sitting on the mantelpiece, and then a pure white pigeon would just fly through the window and just like land right in front of that picture, which that never happens. I don't know. I'm not a bird expert, but we never had like a bird fly into our window ever, let alone the pigeons, which all of them in a big city, they're mostly gray, dirty looking. You rarely ever see a white one, and that to happen. It's like you think like, is that how does that work? Is that a coincidence? So your mind definitely wanders, but I wouldn't say being ever chased by a demon or anything, and hopefully that'll stay that way.
Yeah, not a fun experience for most people. Your accent's very particular, but I was expecting someone from England. The fact that all your movies are around London, but where is your country of origin?
Oh, I'm from Bulgaria, so that city I was talking about is Sofia. So I'm from there, and then I've been in England probably about 10, 11 years when we started making our company. But yeah, so and I also probably there is some explanation maybe for my accent as well. I have before coming to England, my first place where I kind of lived away for a bit longer and started speaking English kind of was in Colorado. So I love Colorado, and I've spent some time around Denver and around the Rockies as well. And it'll be well, if anything, it'll be lovely to when we get to that point in SideWorld when we're starting telling American stories. I'd love to come back.
Well, we have a treasure trove of them. It's like
Oh,
every single state's their own country with their own story. So yeah, 51
absolutely,
opportunities.
absolutely, absolutely.
Forget where's my track of mind. Sorry. Um,
No worries.
Something I like to do. I did it with the last director here. When it comes to the Side World series, when it comes to your films that you've made, are there particular films that you watch that kind of inspired you to do that kind of, I don't know, docu-series and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, like I usually watch more films in preparation when it comes to the our fictional work. I think when it came to Hex and the Droving, my two narrative feature films, that was something that obviously as you usually do as a writer and as a director, like you try to not get too influenced, but watch all your favorite filmmakers and everything. But for these as well, I mean, like I have to say, it's my I try to keep my preparation as well to be all kinds of forms of media. I would say I was reading a lot more paranormal and history books, and that's the thing about Britain, about England as well, is that everything that pretty much everything that comes to the paranormal is so attached to historical events or to a place that's like at least you can date it back to 10th or 11th century or really old churches and places. So you got all these connections. So I'll really like read a lot of these books. I'll listen to some folk songs from like the area usually where we go to explore. Like for example, with our second documentary, side about Terrors of the Sea. There was because of all the sea myths and legends and paranormal events we went into. Like I wanted to listen to old sea songs and sea shanties and really explore that. And I watched The Lighthouse around that time again, which I really like, which is a crazy film by Robert Eggers. But yeah, there's a lot of films I just like to watch periodically. I mean, I mentioned the Alien series already, and that's something that I always cherish. But yeah, from a particularly paranormal point of view, I think there's a few films that at least around Halloween I like to watch, and recently was one of my first viewings of an English production called Ghost Watch, which is a little bit underrated, and I think it's basically the show that was done in '92 that was done by the BBC actually, but it was one of the first attempts at almost like a found footage genre. But because it was done live, they did a show where they had a real presenter from the BBC and they made it look like a real talk show where paranormal investigators, like yourself, go into a house trying to research about a possible entity. And it was all done live on television. And of course, it was all made into, it was actually a horror film, so everything was staged, but a lot of people watching it weren't aware of that. So there was a panic across England at the time, thinking that what was happening was real because things really do get crazy in it. But yeah, it's hard to track down. Like you have to like really look for for where it's actually being streamed. But it was a pleasure to watch again.
Interesting. I never even heard of that one. Well, that sounds like something to watch.
Oh
Maybe
yeah, I recommend it. Ghost Watch. You'll love it. You'll love it. It's so weird.
do you have like your favorite kind of horror slash paranormal films that you particularly like more than anything else that you've seen? Like, oh, that's like one of my favorite of all time. I know you talked about aliens, but like, it's like something about the horror paranormal genre that you particularly like.
Yeah. No, I do. and I love The Exorcist. I know it's a old classic, but it's definitely something that I appreciate the filmmaking part of it like more and more and more as I watch it. And it's something at the time was such a change of how Hollywood and directors and everybody approached anything like that he just changed the genre forever.
Mm. Mine is always Saw. I don't know why. I just like always like the mechanics around everything and how
The puzzle
puzzles.
aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I love Saw too, and I love kind of like before even Saw. I remember like watching first Cube. I don't know if you've seen Cube, which was like another kind of like a genre movie where a bunch of people get stuck in there as they're in this cube, which is a puzzle, and they have to get out. And that was a Canadian film. And then after that, a lot of other films came in. But yeah, no. So especially, I mean, I don't think you can be the first one. I love that ending,
Yeah.
but I think they're all pretty good.
Now you said your interest in the movie Alien. Have you
Hmm.
decided or planned on possibly doing an Alien docuseries, kind of like how you did the SideWorld?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably gonna, at some point we'll do a side road film that's more along the lines of alien encounters for sure. There's plenty of unexplored. I mean, they're explored by a lot of different people, but I don't think anyone's been trying to be too comprehensive about it, especially around these areas where I am, kind of like in the south of England. There's quite a few interesting cases that happen. So, and a couple of alien abductions as well. I've spoken personally to a couple of the more famous ones around here, including Alan Godfrey, for example, which is an incredible case, and that's worthy of a film in of its own. But yeah, no, it's that's a huge passion of mine, and we'll definitely want to do that at some point as a part of SideWorld.
Because I know a lot of things. Well, as in, I'm not saying I'm an alien advocate or like, or I consistently look for alien stories and stuff like that. It's a subject that comes up
Mm,
with the paranormal, but I would like to hear stories from around the world more than just the United States, because it seems like every alien encounter I've ever heard is comes from some part of the United States or even Canada or Mexico, like on this side of the world. It'd be interesting to hear
yeah.
stories from the other side of the world, like from areas in England or farther east.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's some of them are really interesting because I remember there was in Bulgaria, there was a few when I was a kid, a few that got mentioned, and that's when it gets really interesting as well because you'll get it in some areas of the country which is super rural, and there'll be like some old ladies, old granny there in a tiny village that maybe it's so tiny and so remote, doesn't have electricity, and like, they don't even know like the First World War's ended, like that kind of stuff. And they'll go there with the crew and they'll be talking to the old lady about it, and she'll be describing something exactly like out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind without ever seeing a movie in her life. There's no point of reference where you can say, oh, she came up with that story, or she's describing, your typical flying saucer or gray aliens or something. And just the language that she would use, it's so kind of archaic and adorable, but it seems so honest and so real. And that always kind of like sends chill down my spine. Like I'm just thinking of like that, there's definitely something happening in those remote places, everywhere around the world, probably.
And I always it's interesting 'cause I want to hear like other people's stories from parts of the world that they don't get that much attention, because those might be more
Hmm.
compelling versus some of the stories you hear in the United States that everyone and their dog is trying to prove that it's real, and
Yeah, exactly.
I would be awesome just to hear something from like, I don't know, like Russia, or like, not saying Russia, but like essentially like the east area of the world, like China or Japan or maybe Korea, someplace around there, like they've seen something and they'd be less likely to try to cover it up, or at least
Yeah.
exposing everything around it. So that'd be interesting to see if you did some like a series like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, that'll be lovely. I would love to explore it. I mean, there is obviously you mentioned South America as well, and there's quite a few famous cases there as well. Brazil as well. But yeah, there is one in Africa, man. That's you know a whole a whole school of children like saw a thing like land right in the middle of their yard, and like yeah, absolutely story like with so many witnesses and everything, but they just don't get that coverage because, like you said, it's not anywhere. It's not Western Europe or the States.
And America wants to think that we are the ultimate say so when it comes to alien experiences. But do you have, or say better to say this, what is like one of your dream projects that you like want to do?
Well, yeah, I mean there's quite a few, but on the topic of what we're doing here and the topic of SideWorld, like I would really love to. It was something that to me was a bit new from started thinking about maybe a year and a half ago when we started planning it, knowing mainly fictional stories and going into documentaries was like an area that I was like, well, let's see how it goes and what I can offer to the table. But it's something that I found like the pleasure in it more and more, and then like how much it kind of unlocks my knowledge about the world and about where I live and in any other places, like you said, around the world. So a project like growing SideWorld to a as a brand, as in the franchise, to the degree where we can make more films. It's not just like you said, not just England, but little by little we can go in Europe and we can go in the States and go into so many other countries around the world where there's so many stories to tell and so many cases to look at, and give the exposure to those people to be able to tell about their experiences or tell those stories. I think that's certainly a goal that I would like to believe it's more than just a dream. And I think that if we do if people are watching them and people are liking what we do, I think that's something we'll be able to accomplish.
Would you consider that like your future project? There's a future project you're working on right now that you could talk about that might be coming out soon?
Yeah, I mean, like we definitely have a few more films coming out this year on the SideWorld end. I can't talk about the subject matter of them yet because on the next one we're split maybe between two that we can do, and I don't want to say like, oh, I would have rather wanted the other one, but we're also working on so yeah, SideWorld's full steam ahead. We're gonna open a bunch of other parts of it and other ways to experience those stories as well, and that's something that we're really looking forward to. But at the same time, yeah, we still write scripts when it comes to our fictional stuff, and I again, I like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like horror. I think there's a lot of projects there that could happen soon, hopefully. That's it's going to be even bigger and better than our last narrative film as well.
And where can most people find your films? I know, like, at least I think the SideWorld was on YouTube, right?
Yeah, so SideWorld in the States, there's plenty of ways to see it. It's on Amazon. It's on some of them might be already on YouTube. You have also Tubi, Roku channel, and quite a few more. So if you just if you type SideWorld like probably in your preferred way to streaming service, it will probably be there. So then that will be the first three films, which are Haunted Forests of England, Terrors of the Sea, and Damnation Village, which is on haunted villages in England.
What was your favorite of the series that you did?
It's like picking one of my kids, but I like Sophie's choice there. But like, look, any director, I think it's always like the last one and the next one. So I have to say that at the moment, my favorite is Damnation Village. That was great. It's the three most haunted villages in England. There's some, pretty crazy stories there, and yeah, it was very, very awesome to film and a great, very moody experience. And I think we nailed the atmosphere on that one, like the music, the artwork that we use, and yeah, I was quite happy with that one.
Interesting. Yeah, it's something I've always wanted to ask a director for when it comes to things, because I've watched plenty of horror films recently and stuff like that. When it comes to the story that you write about the subject, so let's like take paranormal, say demonic possession as a subject. When it goes into researching the history behind a certain story that you want to tell, how much of factual history that you use to tell the story versus how much of fictional history that you make up just to get the narrative moving along?
That's a very good question. I think it. Look, I mean, it depends on the story. To me, and I see that in films so often, and sometimes I'm on the side where they have needlessly changed something, where I shout at the screen, being like, "Well, it's such a great story. Why would you change that just to make it work for your thing, which is so much less interesting?" So I try to be respectful, especially when it comes to real people. Like if there's something, there must be something about the story that really drives you, makes you, and excites you, why you want to tell it in the first place, and you want to preserve that. So everything that you have to make up, it has to be because you sort of have to adapt a real world story to the format of a 90-minute film or 120-minute film. Like there are just some things that you have to admit. Like Hitchcock used to say, is that film is just like life, but with all the boring bits cut out. And it's every time you do editing of anything, you are changing the truth. Like there's no other way to do it. Like you have to, by omitting some things, you're not telling the whole story. But you also want to tell a narrative that's engaging and makes people want to continue watching it. So I want to be respectful. You want to tell what's the core of the story, what makes it the most interesting or the most human, or what's the theme, or what's the nature of it. It was a paranormal horrific event. Like what was the scariest part of what really made it terrifying. You want to preserve that. You want to cherish it. You want to enhance it. And then the rest is, again, you put it in a package that's what we learn in school, is like how to tell a story efficiently, however you're going to turn it around. Use your tool set, your skill set as directors or writers. But I believe in preserving the core of what makes it important.
That's good. I always wondered, because like I've watched so many films, and like I wonder, like, how much of actual history did they use in this, or is this a lot of like bullshit stories that if I gotta try to look up, there's nothing about it.
Yeah.
I always try to go to it, but I think that's what makes me love we call it first person the fake doc series, like when people do like
like the mockumentary stuff.
The handheld camera, like point of view stuff like that. That always
I love it.
That makes it feel like you're in the story, like you're in part of it, and it makes it more realistic. So they get away with a lot of things in it, but the more outlandish they go with the story, it kind of takes me out. But I always like
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you on that one. It's like obviously Blair Witch is the one that kind of like started that as a famous trend, and that's really well done. But I have a like, again, like underrated, maybe kind of proto Blair Witch Project version of that, which is an alien story that I love, and I watched it the best way possible. It's called Alien Abduction Incident in Lake County, which in of itself is sort of like a remake by the same director who did one that's called the McPherson Tape, which is the story about the family during Thanksgiving somewhere in, looks to me like the northern states, because it was like pine forests and everything. And it's all about an alien abduction of that family. And it's all done handheld, just like you say. It's so realistically done, and the acting's quite believable. And as I was quite young when I was watching it. It was on some cable channel late at night, and it just started. Doesn't have any titles, or didn't come up with anything before that. And so I thought it was real. And it scared the heck out of me. I was just like, I thought a real family somewhere in the States was being kidnapped, and someone found this thing and made a huge impression. I mean, I've loved it ever since. So it's a little apocryphal thing, but it's like, it's like a hush hush thing. It's like, oh, you've also seen it. Oh, wow. Really, really messed me up as a kid. So I do recommend, if you can find it, to watch it if you like found footage stuff.
And there was other film that I watched, the same kind of style. It was a family that was camping in the hills of, actually funny enough, where I live right here in North Carolina, but up in Asheville in the Brown Mountains, where we had the legendary Brown Mountain Light, and they were camping up there. And the same thing, the kid had a camera because he had some kind of autism that he needed a camera. It was like his way of stemming or keeping calm or something like that. And he was videotaping everything, and it went from them like camping to them being abducted to like running from the aliens and hiding out with some redneck guy in the woods, and it went from that. It was awesome. It reminds me of that kind of same thing, but I forget, it's like the Brown Mountain Lights alien abduction or something like that, but in the same vein. And it looked like it was low budget, like somebody not so well known. I didn't recognize any of the actors in the
those are the best for that. Like it's like I think they're the best when they're low budget. You don't know anyone. It's just like something that you can actually find. I think I think it breaks the immersion when they try to do too much with it. Like you say, they do something goofy, or you start seeing like obvious visual effects. It's like, that that doesn't seem real, but something like that, man. Like, I'd love to watch that one. That sounds great, and there's some good Bigfoot ones as well.
That is, I guess you call it an infamous subject. um, it's funny. We never talked about it particularly on the podcast itself.
Gotcha.
I've seen a few things. I've listened to a few episodes and stuff like that. I'm still kind of on the fence, not 100% on the fence about it. I'm kind of leaning to
Right.
might exist or it most likely does, but it's interesting. I've never watched any actual like found footage style films surrounding Bigfoot though, but I'm pretty sure there might be
There's
hints.
a couple of small ones, but yeah, absolutely. But in terms of the subject matter itself, like, yeah, I was for a while wasn't really. Again, I just like the stories, and I like all the folklore with the Native Americans and everything, and all these stories there. So there's a fellow podcaster as well of yours that's I think the podcast called something like the Sasquatch Chronicles. It's basically every episode is an interview with another eyewitness, and I tell you, man, some of them are quite compelling. Like, I wasn't sure to begin with, but a friend of mine introduced me to it, and when you start really getting into former cops and military men and people who have like really nothing to gain by telling these stories, telling how they saw something, and they pissed themselves and they run away, and like those big huge men, like that nothing can scare them, and you can hear that in their voice. It's like, man, you're either an Al Pacino level of a actor there, or something really did scare you there. So there's some compelling stuff, I think.
I know about the Bigfoot Chronicle, but Bigfoot Society is the one that's like I guess we associate most with when it comes to that information. I usually go to them for
Gotcha.
any Bigfoot information, but when we ever plan to do the episode, but we kind of brought Bigfoot in for a few subjects here and there, but no, did a full episode.
I mean, it's interesting there as always, because like when you talk about the paranormal, like there's, even from what I've heard, again, I'm not an expert, but from what I've heard in their community, there's also kind of like a split between kind of the monkey people, that it's a form of, and it's like that scientific group, and then there's the other ones who say, yeah, but there's all the paranormal things that happen around Bigfoot, and they think of it as more of a paranormal event, which again, to begin with, to me sounded like that half of the people were wrong. But then the more I listened, and the more that started sounding more compelling, because there's a lot of unexplained things, and they see a lot of orbs and lights, connected to Bigfoot, and mind speak and all kinds of stuff that you're like, well, surely this can't be real. And then, but there's more and more stories that make you think there's something fishy there, and it's just not just a giant hairy creature that somehow no one's spotted. Like, there could be something else about it. But that's so weird to me that I wouldn't even know where to begin.
My small theory on Bigfoot, and I remember I mentioned this in a few other podcasts where we were talking about Bigfoot specifically, but I remember I always say that to understand this theory, you have to believe another theory in order for me to explain this one. In a sense
Yep.
of, you have to understand about the Anunnaki, about how they possibly created humanity and stuff like that. So if you take that subject and apply it to what I believe about Bigfoot, I believe Bigfoot is a failed experiment of the Anunnaki when they were trying to figure out the human. And he was just like, this one's too big. It's dumb. It doesn't know what it's talking about. Let's throw it out.
Yeah.
And they threw it out into the woods thinking it would just die, but then obviously it evolved and became its own species and reproduced. And now it's, all secretive hiding and stuff like that from man. And that was like, that's a plausible theory of how they got here. And most people think they're aliens from another dimension, that they just come here for whatever reason, or this and that. But most animals that we know exist, we've never really seen in wildlife because they hide from humanity. So it wouldn't be too far fetched for a Bigfoot to hide from humanity, knowing how dangerous we are. So,
yeah, no, it does seem like some sort of a prototype, doesn't it? For what the human should be.
sounds like a subject for your next doc film.
Who knows? Who knows, man? Who knows where it takes us? But it's an interesting one.
Well, I appreciate the time. I just looked at the time where you're going. So I know we talked about where people can find the films, but where can everybody find you in your social medias around Rubicon Films and SideWorld and all that?
Sure, yeah. Like on Twitter is a good one. At SideWorld UK, you can find the SideWorld account. Also, we have a Rubicon account, which is at Rubicon Films UK, and I'm there somewhere as well, which is I'm at the George Popov, and same thing on Instagram and on Facebook. You'll be able to find us too, or you can just Google SideWorld, and you'll be able to see a bunch of stuff about us, articles, things, and yeah, we have a nice little healthy community that we're building little by little with people all kinds of interests. A lot of paranormal people there, a lot of history and folklore people there. Everybody's kind of hanging out. So yeah, come and join us and enjoy the movies.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking movies with me.
No, thanks, man. Thanks, man. It was a pleasure. Nice little chill convo. Always appreciated. So yeah, take care. Thanks for having me.
As always, we'll catch your widows in the next one.